and go to, I'm getting it up here on the, I guess our first thing is to approve of the minutes, correct or not?
Yes, the minutes of the last meeting were attached to your packet, and
Yes.
hopefully you all had a chance to review that. And if there are any questions or any suggestions, we'll be happy to take that. If not, we would ask for a motion.
I make the motion to approve.
Albright, second.
Okay, so at this time, if you don't mind, unmute your device, and Mr. Chair, you can call for the question.
I don't have any questions.
Just to vote, all those in favor.
Oh, all those in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. It seems like it passes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I think we had a bad connection there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, this is Wendell Long. For the record, I abstained since I wasn't a member of the board at the time.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Same vote from Jim Sayre. Abstention.
Thank you.
And it seems like we don't have any committee reports from Jim. So I think we'll move on to the introduction of new members. Jim, if you could move that forward.
I think we may have audio with Jim, so I'll take this one. So again, welcome to our two new members. You've already had an opportunity to chime in, so thank you for that. The board at their previous meeting appointed our two new members, and if you don't mind, you can introduce yourselves again and maybe just say a little something about your interest in participating with the CART committees. If you don't mind, let's start with Jim.
Hi, Jim Sayre. I live in Marana and University of Arizona in the parking and transportation department, and have a career in transit and mobility related fields. So that's kind of why I have an interest.
Thank you. Welcome again. Wendell, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. Definitely appreciate it. I live in the unincorporated county of Pima. Have a business in Tucson, Arc Point Labs of Tucson. Many of you probably know me from my previous life when I was the CEO of Casino del Sol for the Pascua Yaqui tribe. My interest in this came from being the chairman of the Sales Tax Advisory Commission that was trying to raise trying to approve a quarter-cent sales tax to help improve the roads approximately 2 years ago. But thank you once again for approving me. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Welcome again to the CART committee, and Mr. Chair, we're ready for the next item. Okay, Mr. Chair, I believe Jim was going to give this report. Jim, can you hear us? Okay, I'll go ahead and give you a quick update. And as you all know, the RTA board has been meeting on their regular schedule, typically over the summer. We don't conduct meetings unless there's a special need to have a meeting. So over the last several meetings, the board considered several IGAs and agreements, moving multiple projects forward into identifying additional funding needed for right-of-way purchase, for example, and moving projects into construction. We'll give you an update on more detail on specific projects later on the agenda. In addition to IGAs and agreements, a significant action that was taken by the board is typically our annual budget that's approved in May. The budget was approved in May of 2020, and typically after we close the fiscal year, we are able to roll over any funds that were not used in the previous fiscal year into the current year. And as a result, we amend our budgets. At the last meeting in September, the board approved the amended budget, and I'm glad to report that we do have a very robust budget and anticipating to continue to deliver projects. With that, Mr. Chair, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer questions about board activities. If not, we're ready to move to the next item.
Well, isn't there a screen?
It says RTA.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. Okay, Mr. Chair, I assume there are no questions on the RTA board, so we're ready to move to the next item. On this one, James Tao will give you an update on the status of all the active projects, and we do have a few slides that we'd like to share with you. James, are you able to share your slides?
Well, they haven't popped up yet. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thanks for having me. Just standing by for the PowerPoint.
James, you should
Yes.
have control. Go ahead and click on the slide and then use your arrows. Sorry, try again. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. So as Mr. Mogimi mentioned, my name is James Tao, and I'm a programming analyst with the RTA, and I work on budget. So I'll begin with project delivery. Beyond new roadway corridors, bike lanes, sidewalks, and enhanced pedestrian crossings address quality of life issues for the region, and our RTA efforts have and will continue to contribute significantly. Broadway between Camino Seco and Houghton was completed in the spring and is currently in landscape establishment. This section now has a raised median with bus pullouts, sidewalks, and notable drainage improvements. Public art and street lighting have also been included. Valencia between Ajo Way and Wave Road has reached substantial completion. This far western portion of Valencia is a fully functional all-weather section of roadway with extensive drainage improvements, bike lanes, and sidewalks. The new drainage features will alleviate flooding problems experienced previously during heavy rain events. Now to roadway projects in construction. Broadway from Euclid to Country Club began construction last winter, with storm drain installation continuing, as well as water and wastewater upgrades. Between Euclid and Campbell, curbing and sidewalk work is in progress. This project is targeted for late 2021. And in Oro Valley, La Cholla between Overton and Tangerine is nearing completion and is scheduled to be open to traffic today. Substantial completion is expected later this month. The Ruth Roth traffic interchange is fully underway, with overpass bridge elements taking form, and traffic along the interstate has been diverted to frontage roads. And next up in construction, Downtown Links was awarded jointly to Borderland and Granite Construction, and initial construction activities have begun. Houghton, Valencia de Maria, and Cleveland Way was awarded to Borderland and should commence this month. Construction is expected for the next 15 months. Other activities include right-of-way as well as utility coordination on Grant Road phases 3 and 4. Relocations are underway, and the final 2 phases of Grant have begun design activities. The railroad overpass or viaduct on 22nd Street continues to be under development, and on Silverbell, right-of-way activities are underway, as is archaeology preparation. Field work is scheduled to begin this fall. The Union Pacific Railroad underpass at Grant is currently in development of a revised design concept, increasing from the current 4 lanes to 6 lanes under the existing bridge structure. Pedestrian and bicycle traffic would be accommodated on a separate structure, which would span the railroad tracks and I-10. And finally, on Houghton, Irvington to 22nd, design is nearing completion and right-of-way activities will be initiated soon. Construction is still to be determined pending right-of-way acquisition and utility relocation. That concludes my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if there are no other questions, we'll be happy to move to the next item. I believe Jim is able to present. Crystal, if you don't mind. There we go. All right, thank you.
Oh, okay, Mr. Chair, can you hear me okay?
Jim, I think we lost the chair on the phone. He is trying to.
Okay. Okay, but you can hear me. That's the main thing. I think.
Yes,
My apologies for the technical difficulties on my end. I think I've got control of the screen. If not, I'll just ask you to move forward with that. At any rate, I'm pleased to give you a report this morning on the RTA financial update. It's been a tumultuous year, and I know you'll all be interested in what I have to report today.
For the record, the vice chair obviously is with us until the chair can call back in.
Thank you. At any rate, what I'd like to do is report to you where we are in terms of our revenue information. We actually had a favorable year last year in spite of a downturn at the end of the year. We exceeded our RTA budget by more than $3 million. And that also exceeded our updated forecast as well. We do budget fairly conservatively. We look to the Eller College of Management's Economic Business Research Center. The EBRC provides us an updated revenue estimate every 2 to 3 years. We established a budget for fiscal year 20 using an older version of it. And we mid-year last year got an update on the revenue estimate, and we even beat the revenue estimate, the more recent one, which was more favorable to us. I'll show you what the recent deposits look like. In terms of the revenues that we received, we anticipated a budget of 85.9, almost $86 million. We recorded $89.2 million, although as you can see, the last 2 months of the year were negative to our month-to-month estimates. In terms of what we looked at for fiscal 21, we reviewed with the RTA board in May an estimate that was basically 15% less than our baseline estimate. Which was consistent with what we were hearing from the city of Tucson and some of the other jurisdictions in the area. I think town of Marana budgeted for a 10% decline. City of Tucson budgeted for 15% of a decline from their prior year's revenue estimate. And we did a 15-year revenue estimate decline as well, or a budget of $77.7 million. In terms of where we stand, though, I'm pleased to report that we actually are doing better than we had anticipated. You can see that we did have a fairly down month. This was representative of collections during the month of April. That's the month that was the month of shutdown. And our most recent deposits have been better than that. When we reopened in May, our budget was actually, or our revenue was actually 4% above what it had been for the same month the year prior. And by June, we were actually up 12% above the collections that we had seen in June of 2019. We're now at about 7% ahead of where we had been. And you'll see that here. This graph represents the green bars represent the dollar value of the collection on a monthly basis, and then the red line represents the percent of growth over the prior year. So you can see that while we took a beating in the month of April, we stormed back. One thing I will point out to you, though, you're going to hear a little bit of confusion potentially about what month we're talking about. The RTA operates on a modified cash basis. So what we take in a deposit during the month of September is actually representative of what took place at the cash register during the month of July. So there's a processing period where the state of Arizona takes in the revenue and then gives us a check roughly a month and a half after the close of the month of transaction. So when I talk about a September deposit, that is for commercial activity that occurred during the month of July. So this is how our budget looks. Again, we have the $77.7 million adopted budget, and then we have our first three deposits, or the first quarter of revenue for fiscal 21 that we've received, and as you can see, we've done well relative to year-over-year growth and certainly to the budget. That said, it's been a volatile year. And we're getting revenues in that are coming in areas that we have. Whoops! I just lost my screen here. Darn it. Oh, there we're back. We have seen a rebound in consumer purchasing during the month of June and May and into July. Interestingly, construction has been very robust, and I'll speak to that in a moment. And we believe a lot of this has to do with the CARES Act stimulus. People have been protected. Those that were laid off had very substantial unemployment benefits that they were able to avail themselves of, and as well as the stimulus payments that came out to the taxpayers that were mailed out in April and May. So looking at the various segments of our economy, what I'm going to loosely call the hospitality trade group, consisting of restaurant and bar sales, amusements, and lodging, they were heavily impacted and continue to be so, and likely will be for an extended period of time. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. On the flip side, we've seen a lot of remote sales. You may be tracking this, but beginning in October of last year, we began to receive sales tax revenue for, call it internet sales taxes, if you will. It's technically referred to as remote sales and marketplace facilitated sales. And we began to receive that in October last year, and enjoyed some pretty good revenues during the holiday season as a result. And it is now looking like there is an increasing shift towards these remote sales, as one might expect, as a result of the pandemic. So looking at prime contracting, this is representative of the construction activity that's occurring in the community. This is not just road work, but it's residential construction, it's commercial construction, all of which is taxable. And one of the things that we saw was that construction workers were deemed to be essential workers through the pandemic, and so they were not mandated to stay at home. So construction occurred during the pandemic-related shutdowns, and that actually worked out pretty well, because in many cases, particularly for my colleagues working in the developing roadway projects, having less traffic to contend with was definitely a benefit in expedited work. During the month of June, this is actual collections during the month of June, commercial activity during the month of June. We actually saw over $1 million worth of TPT collections. We have not seen that since August of 2008. We've not exceeded $1 million. This is the largest we've seen since prior to the Great Recession. So that's certainly of note. We believe it's to a large extent driven by low interest rates. However, while there is a great deal of interest in new housing, we also recognize that the pipeline of available lots is pretty weak. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Continuing on, as I mentioned, the hospitality group, we typically see peak revenues in the month of March, still strong in February and April and even into May. And that represents on an annual basis about 15% of our total collections. So it is not insubstantial. As you can see from the graph, we really saw the impact of this beginning in the month of February. Although we had a good gem and mineral show period, March, things were starting to shut down, and we actually saw things really decline beyond that. The one bright spot, if you could call it that, is that we did see a little bump, and you'll see that for the month of June, and that actually probably relates as much to the presence of transient firefighters in the area fighting the Bighorn Fire, and there was lodging associated with that, and some restaurant and bar sales there. So we think this is going to be an area that's going to remain weak for a while. I mentioned the internet sales taxes, if you will, that online retailing. When we began collecting it in October, it was about 5% of our total retail. That has grown to be about 9% in July of this year. And in fact, if you look at the green line represents the actual deposits. So we actually saw more in retail sales online during the month of July in dollar volume than we saw during the holiday sales season here last December. So this is something that if you look at the before and after pandemic, if you will, is represented about 6.5% pre-pandemic, and it's 8.5 to 9% since the pandemic. So, is this durable? We think it may very well be. This may be a change that we see that's going to continue for a while. So I won't read through this. I think I've already pretty much hit on the high points of this. We are going to be very concerned about the amount of revenue we're going to be collecting in the coming years. We think that this recent high level of sales tax activity may be short-lived. We see a lot of underlying weaknesses in the economy. We still have relatively high unemployment, at least compared to the pre-pandemic period. We know that CARES Act funding is diminishing, and that has propped up our economy to some extent. And we know that one of our big areas, that hospitality group, if you will, there's going to be some continuing suffering in that area as people still are a little bit reluctant to travel. You see that in the airlines, you see that in the hotels, you see that in related sales. In terms of where we're going with our budget, we did, as Mr. Modini mentioned, adopted an amended budget at the September board meeting. What it does is it rolls over the unexpended funding from last fiscal year. So we are currently operating with a budget that will end our fiscal year at $9 million of an ending projected fund balance. If all of the activity that's programmed takes place, we think it probably won't. We think we'll end up with a fairly high balance at the end of the fiscal year because there are a number of projects that have carried forward that have not yet started construction, namely some big projects like 22nd Street and some others that we're carrying a fairly large balance on. Going forward, we're entering the last 5-year period of the RTA plan. And what we do is we program on a 5-year basis. Some things that we're looking at right now is a working estimate, if you will, that shows a 10% decline in RTA revenues for fiscal 22, which is the first year of our next 5-year period, and reduces to 5% below the baseline in 23 and 24. So those are some assumptions that we're making right now. We also know that another source of revenue to the RTA plan delivery is what's called HERF 12R. It's a part of the State Highway Fund that the board has directed to delivery of RTA roadway element projects. This was done when we first began seeing the weakness in revenue associated with the Great Recession, and that highway revenue fund is really sourced from gasoline sales taxes as well as vehicle licensing taxes. Gasoline sales are down. They had been at historic levels, high levels, but with the pandemic, people have ceased to travel as much, so we've seen a big reduction in that. On the flip side, though, there is one bright spot, and that is that we do believe that there will be modest gains in the federal surface transportation program or surface transportation block grants that we get. So those also are pledged to the delivery of the RTA plan. In terms of our working estimate, we're looking at RTA revenues both pre-pandemic and our working assumptions right now. You can see those revenues shown in the bar graph. A little over $29 million won't be realized in this current plan from what we had thought pre-pandemic. Looking at HERF 12R, that portion of the highway fund, the drop-off's a little steeper, but it recovers. But the absolute number of dollars that we receive is smaller as well. So that's a little over $12 million that we don't expect to realize as a result of the pandemic declines in activity. In terms of where we're going, is really too early to reasonably forecast what we're going to be facing. But that said, we have to plan. We have to do a 5-year plan for project delivery. We need to demonstrate that we are going to be able to fully fund at the ballot amounts the remaining RTA roadway element plans, which we're in the midst of developing a plan to do. We actually have, even with all of these declines, and with our ongoing commitments to repay our existing bonds and pay for transit and other things, even with that, we still will have more than enough money to cover the remaining projects. We're right now going to have to delay a couple of them, though, that were identified as being initiated in the next fiscal year. And so that's something that we're working with our jurisdictional partners on. In fact, we have a meeting next week to go over project delivery and project readiness and the development of this fiscal year 22 to 26 transportation improvement plan. So I think that's the last slide I have. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. I know this was a lot of material, and I'll do the best I can.
Okay,
Anybody have any questions?
Okay, if we don't have any questions, we can move on to the next item, please. And I believe we still have auto issues with the chairman, our vice chair. At your pleasure, you can adjourn the meeting.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Jim Sayer.
Second?
Second, Chris Albright.
Thank you. Jim, that was a very good report, and we thank you everyone for coming to the meeting. Hopefully the next time we can, the audio will either be better or we can meet in person. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Bye.